everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Bone King the Restorer's Wildlife, Chapter 155. War Chapter 155 to 157. War in the Empire. The Blood Emperor, who had obtained Princess Lana's handwritten letter through secret means, was having a massive headache. He never expected that most detestable woman was also a member of the Forgotten Island. Now was she preparing to step onto the stage and take control of the kingdom. What a disgusting person. She could sacrifice her own eldest brother without a second thought. He estimated she didn't plan to let her father and second brother off either. Although he didn't know the details of Princess Lana's plan, a little thought made it obvious that freak would absolutely not leave those two obstacles alive. With that woman's twisted personality and bizarre intelligence, combined with the power and intelligence of the Forgotten Island, there was no possibility of failure for Princess Lana. Even if he refused to cooperate, she would still achieve her goal. So, should he refuse? Or rather, could he refuse? Since the Forgotten Island could support Princess Lana to control the kingdom, they naturally had ways to support someone to control the empire. With Flutter's prestige and strength, changing the empire wouldn't be difficult. The Blood Emperor felt a deep sense of powerlessness. Although he had many ideas, in the face of absolute strength, any schemes and intrigues were merely bringing humiliation upon himself. The only thing to rejoice about was that, judging from his current communication with Alka and their current arrangements for him, they were still relatively satisfied with him as the Emperor of the Empire. As long as he accepted their control, they had no intention of replacing him. The Blood Emperor felt humiliated. An emperor of the empire controlled by others was that still an emperor? He was nothing more than a puppet. The only ones capable of opposing the Forgotten Island, besides the mysterious Council State, was the Theocracy. The Council State was a nation under the control of dragons, and they rarely communicated with the few human nations. Then, would aligning with the Theocracy be feasible? The Theocracy seemed to be secretly opposing the Forgotten Island. If he could unite with the power of the Theocracy, no, he couldn't act rashly just yet. At least until the other side prepared to completely control the empire, he couldn't show any thoughts of resistance. Therefore, he had to accept any of their demands. However, contact with the Theocracy was also necessary and must exist. The Blood Emperor wrote a secret letter and handed it to a trusted subordinate, ordering him to deliver it to the Theocracy. As for the other side, he began preparing for this year's war against the kingdom. Since they wanted his side to start a war, then let there be war. According to their demands, the scale this time was much larger than before, and a member of the imperial family was dispatched to the front lines as the commander-in-chief. The Blood Emperor's little tricks. Interesting. The news transmitted back from the Theocracy made Rowan laugh out loud. The Blood Emperor probably couldn't have imagined that Rowan had already planted over 100 pawns in the Theocracy, all of whom were high-ranking officials. As for the Theocracy, besides themselves, Rowan knew them best in this world. As soon as the secret letter arrived, before it could even be handed to the upper echelons, Rowan had already read it and intercepted it. Rowan didn't care about the Blood Emperor's little tricks, whether they allied or not had little impact on him. In any case, his side was already prepared to take action against the Theocracy. The legacy of the 6 great gods in the Theocracy was just a waste sitting there, only his side could bring out its maximum potential. Zeshi Zetsumiai's strength was decent. If she could join his side, she could also provide some assistance in opposing Ain's Olgaun in the future. In the slain Theocracy, the only things Rowan cared about were those divine tier equipment and the world item, downfall of castle and country, and perhaps some hidden cash shop items. But with Rowan's current strength, he could already begin preparing to conquer them. As preliminary preparation, he used soul stripping to control high-ranking officials. Now he had already planted over 100 nails, with members scattered across various positions. But to be safe, Rowan still wanted to wait until his strength reached level 70. Although he could defeat Zeshi Zetsumiai now, there was no need. It was most comfortable to completely crush the opponent. Zeshizetsumei could be called the strongest human guardian deity. In order to use the divine equipment left behind by the 6 great gods, her class build was not systematic. If her divine equipment were taken away, her strength wouldn't be very high, probably only at the level of the battle maids. Even if she possessed all the divine equipment of the 6 great gods, she would probably only be on par with an unequipped Shaltir. Rowan entered a state of secluded study in the Holy Kingdom. The collection of experience was completely left to his clones. The outside world was surging with winds and clouds, and the Blood Emperor was highly efficient. In just 1 week, Duke Vanaland of the Empire led 3 major legions and 3 of the 4 knights, aggressively marching toward the kingdom. This massive troop movement naturally could not be hidden from the kingdom's scouts. Battles between the Empire and the kingdom occurred every year, but there had never been a battle of such a grand scale. The kingdom urgently convened a meeting, which was filled with noisy arguments. The old king sat on his throne with a massive headache, while the loyal warrior captain stood below the king's seat. No one could ignore the immense pressure from the Empire. Previously, the annual battles could be handled by a single noble leading troops to oppose them. But this year was clearly different. The Empire was serious, the soldiers they deployed were completely incomparable to previous years, and 3 of the 4 knights had been dispatched. They wanted to viciously tear a piece off the kingdom. After heated discussions, the final plan was decided, led by 2 great nobles, with other nobles providing soldiers and provisions. Marquis Bullope and Marquis Raven would each lead 50,000 soldiers as the left and right wings, while the kingdom would deploy 80,000 as the center army, making a total of 180,000 soldiers marching out. This time, they had to fiercely crush the Empire's arrogant attitude. Since 3 of the opponents for knights had been dispatched, the warrior captain here would definitely go to the battlefield. In addition, who would lead the center army became a matter of dispute. The old king originally planned to lead the army himself, but several nobles raised objections. As the core of the nation and being of advanced age, the old king should not go. It would be better to let the young and strong the first prince lead the team. If they wanted the first prince to succeed the throne later, then they should let him show his capabilities. The old king was unwilling to accept such a proposal. The risks of war were immense, and he did not want his eldest son to suffer any harm on the battlefield. However, there were several nobles proposing this, and their words were harsh. They argued that although the first prince came from a military background, he had no military achievements. If he were to become king in the future, he would not be able to win the people's respect without any military exploits. How could the first prince withstand such provocation? What did they mean by no military achievements? Going to the battlefield, he would surely be better than them. He just hadn't had the opportunity to show it. This time, he would let them see his strength. Filled with anger, the first prince clamored loudly, immediately requesting to go to battle. This made the old king extremely angry. This fool, did he really think war was a game? His enemy was none other than the Empire. Although he was unwilling to admit it, the Empire's strength clearly far surpassed the kingdom's. Being put on the spot, he really couldn't find an excuse to refuse, and he was even backstabbed by his own eldest son. In the end, he had no choice but to agree. Chapter 156, Intelligence from the Central Six Nations. Chapter 157, Intelligence from the Central Six Nations. The old king was not entirely at ease regarding his eldest son. Although this guy was reckless, if he were protected by the kingdom's most elite royal guard, plus the warrior captain, even if they were defeated, he wouldn't lose his life on the battlefield. The war situation was urgent, leaving little time for everyone to deliberate. Once the decision was made, the nobles returned to mobilize their troops, and then gathered at Erantal to confront the Empire. The old king instructed the warrior captain that protecting the first prince was the highest priority, and then handed over the royal guard to the first prince. The first prince was indifferent, not thinking for a moment that he would lose. The old king had a splitting headache. Piece after piece of intelligence flowed into the hands of Princess Lana. Her 2 current maids had already been replaced by members of 8 Fingers. That's right, the tentacles of 8 fingers had already extended into the royal palace. Several guards and maids had intricate connections with 8 fingers, and these two by Princess Lana's side were intelligence personnel supported by 8 fingers. The nobles who proposed sending the first prince on the expedition at the meeting were naturally bribed by Princess Lana. This was even accomplished through her own power, not relying on 8 fingers. After all, her current strength was formidable. She was no longer the caged bird in the palace who could do nothing as in the original story. There was much she could do. Everything is proceeding according to plan. So, is the plan targeting the Central Army ready? Yes, the 80,000 men of the Central Army will fall into the Empire's trap. Everyone except the warrior captain, including the first prince, will die in an ambush. Why leave the warrior captain alone? The leader says the warrior captain is an interesting person who can be kept. When the time comes, he will surely be imprisoned due to the death of the first prince. At that point, you, princess, can pardon him and take him as your subordinate. However, this man is extremely loyal. He can only be utilized, not taken as a confidant. You should know how to treat a loyal person. The leader? Does that refer to the teacher? No, it should be referring to Alka. Treating a loyal person naturally means occupying the moral high ground, bestowing favors, and then having him work for you. For such a person, one only needs to display a positive image. As the kingdom's strongest existence on the surface, it would be a pity for him to die on the battlefield now. Princess Lana was confident she had a way to make him serve her. I understand. Then how will the Empire side be handled? The intelligence officer said on the Empire's side, 1 army will die in an ambush, and the other 3 will only be able to fight normally before retreating. Princess Lana was somewhat puzzled. An entire army wiped out. Why was Alka so obsessed with annihilating the entire army? Was it because personnel from the Forgotten Island would personally take action on the battlefield, and they needed to be eliminated entirely due to fears of intelligence leaks? Interesting. Princess Lana did not know about the existence of players and experience points, otherwise she would have immediately associated this with Rowan wanting to farm some experience. Instead of letting these soldiers die meaninglessly on the battlefield, it would be better to farm some experience to fill the experience bar. But there is a trick to farming experience without leaking intelligence. The Empire's Grand Army was already laying siege outside Irantal, and the kingdom's army was only just slowly arriving. Compared to the Empire, the kingdom's efficiency in both intelligence and military mobilization was shockingly low. If not for the fact that this was a play, Irantal would likely have been taken by force already. Under the advice of several military advisors among his subordinates, the first prince adopted a flanking maneuver. That is, having the left and right armies engage head-on, while he led the elites to circle around through the Tob Great Forest for a sneak attack. Once successful, he could catch them off guard, and he would also achieve a great merit. It was simply a perfect tactic. The first prince was smug about the plan he had set for himself, just waiting for this victory, so he could return to the royal capital and see the shocked expressions on those guys' faces. Thinking of this, the first prince couldn't help but reveal a satisfied smile. As for the warrior captain, he was to try his best to attract the enemy's attention at the front, creating opportunities for them. As the kingdom's strongest warrior captain, if he didn't appear on the battlefield, there would surely be problems, right? Those guys would definitely notice something. The first prince put his mind to work, knowing that such things as ambushes must be kept secret, and that the enemy must not be allowed to detect anything unusual. A person like the warrior captain definitely had to go and attract attention. The warrior captain was naturally unwilling, as the order he had received was to protect the first prince. However, when the first prince produced the king's warrant, the warrior captain, though incredulous, agreed. Because it was clearly written on it that the warrior captain was to follow the arrangements of the first prince, and it even bore the king's seal. The first prince was very happy, his forged order had taken effect. His military advisors were indeed clever, otherwise, it would have been really hard to command the warrior captain. Although it wasn't quite according to the rules, it didn't matter. As long as he could win, everything else was a minor issue. Victory would be achieved by him. The first prince did not know that the Empire had already dispatched an army to set an ambush, and the ambush location was right on the first prince's route. All of the first prince's actions were within Alka's plan. This time, not only this kingdom unit, but also the Empire army acting as the ambushers would be reaped by Rowan. Just as the kingdom and the Empire were about to engage in a great war, Rowan, the mastermind behind it, did not put his mind on this war. In his view, this kind of war was simply like children fighting. It was fine to watch when bored, but he would never go out of his way to observe it. An intelligence report transmitted back from Shadow 3 and 4 in the 6 great central nations caught Rowan's attention. The 6 great central nations had a much larger area than the human kingdoms in the northwest. In a desolate forest over there, the existence of amorphous slime was discovered, and there was more than one. They were over level 50, and among them, there was even a primordial chaos. Rowan was instantly interested. Amorphous slime was a high-level monster similar to a slime, and the primordial chaos was even more extraordinary. Legend had it that all current primordial chaos were split bodies. And the core primordial chaos was a massive single-celled protoplast, without a head, without organized organs, and without limbs. It had existed since the birth of the planet, and resided at the bottom of the Wumiadre Mountains on the northern continent. Legend had it that at the beginning of the world's birth, it continuously split off its own life forms. These life forms slowly evolved into the numerous lives on the planet, and were the prototype of all life on this planet. The original primordial chaos was named Ubosathla, the planet's earliest life, recording the legend of creation. And according to legend, in some distant future, it would once again absorb all living creatures on the planet. Of course, this was only a legend, and its authenticity had not been confirmed. There was no relevant content in the plot. In the materials of this world, only those ancient books mentioned it slightly. Such content, like a mythological story, was basically believed by no one. In fact, let alone that primordial chaos from the beginning of creation, even ordinary primordial chaos had never been seen by anyone. Primordial chaos was indeed a very rare creature. Chapter 157, Primordial Chaos. Chapter 158, Primordial Chaos. In the story, Ains Ulgaun's battle-made squad member, Solution, is a hybrid of primordial chaos and amorphous slime. Rowan could not possibly miss such a high-level monster. Using forbidden magic, world movement, the next moment, Rowan arrived at the barren forest. This was the northern part of the central 6 nations, the climate was cold, creatures were scarce, and the location from the intelligence report was this vast forest. When his clone was scouting here, it discovered the figure of a primordial chaos, but the target's level was too high, so the clone did not approach and instead retreated directly. The range was roughly in this area. Although the exact location wasn't fully determined, it wasn't a big problem. He summoned dozens of crows, and the crows flew off in all directions. As the crows' levels increased, both their speed and scouting abilities improved significantly. Now, they were scouting from the sky like satellites. Although this forest was large, it wouldn't take long to find those slime creatures. After only half a day, one of the crows discovered a trail. At the foot of a pitch-black mountain in the distance, it discovered a group of slime creatures. Good grief, this group of slime creatures was entangled together, connected to each other. He didn't know what they were doing, but they were almost turning into one giant slime. If not for the 7 or 8 attribute panels above them, one would assume at first glance that it was a single creature. What are these guys doing? Creating solution. Amorphous slime, level, 52 karma, -200 Class, amorphous slime, LV10, scout, LV15, hexer, LV10, assassin, LV10, poisoner, LV7, primordial chaos, slime, level, 63 karma, -200 class, primordial chaos, LV10, slime warrior, LV15, berserker, LV10, devourer, LV10, blackguard, LV10, chaos warrior, LV5, chaos splitter, LV3. These monsters' levels are a bit high. Even in the Central Six Nations, apart from those dragon clans, very few creatures can reach such levels. As for humans, they are even less capable of reaching such levels. Rowan didn't dare to act rashly. The amorphous slimes were nothing, but the primordial chaos was a bit special. It wasn't because of its level 63 was nothing, and Rowan could easily control it. What really concerned Rowan was that legend. Rowan spent another day having the crows carefully search the entire forest. Finally, he discovered that the highest level creatures in this vast forest were right here. Although there were amorphous slimes or other creatures in other places, most were below level 40. As for the primordial chaos, there was only this one, there were no others. There were no higher-level existences, nor were there any strange traces of magic. Have the strongest slime creatures gathered together. This primordial chaos was surprisingly a lone seedling. Considering the ancient legend and the target's chaos splitter's skill, it was possible that its backing was very significant. If that original primordial chaos truly existed, it would at least be a max-level existence, perhaps even exceeding the level cap. However, since he had encountered it, it wouldn't be appropriate to back down now. Rowan teleported over and used soul stripping on one of the amorphous slimes. Ordinary slime souls were very weak to the point of being non-existent, but these amorphous slimes were countless times stronger than slimes, their souls were very sturdy. However, they still had no resistance against Rowan's soul stripping. Soul modification then stuffed it back. One of the amorphous slimes became Rowan's subordinate. Perhaps they had been invincible for too long, and hadn't encountered any opponents, so their reactions had become sluggish. After one was controlled, these slime monsters finally felt that something was wrong. However, Rowan used soul stripping again. Modification stuffed it back. The second one was modified. The amorphous slimes soon discovered a traitor among them. They started fighting, as if they were having an internal conflict. Although it was quite interesting to watch, Rowan didn't have time to watch the show now, because the strongest primordial chaos's body began to twist and expand, like a balloon being inflated, and it actually turned into a tall black giant. The giant had no facial features and looked very eerie, but its limbs were muscular and powerful. He locked onto the target with the Eye of Myriad Manifestations, and used the analysis skill to examine its form and abilities. The other two thoughts from parallel thinking began to use magic. 8th tier, Flame Prison. 9th tier, Lightning Dragon. 9th tier, Ice Dragon. 9th tier, Fire Dragon. 9th tier, Dark Dragon. After restricting the primordial chaos with the Flame Prison, Rowan cast spells in succession, using the 4 great elements to condense 4 elemental creatures. Facing this kind of special creature, he would let his created elemental creatures test the waters. Each 9th tier elemental dragon could fight a level 60 monster, with 4 of them surrounding it. Even the primordial chaos could not ignore them. Sure enough, facing the 4 elemental dragons rushing over aggressively, the primordial chaos made a strange sound. It was muddled, seemingly unable to speak, and its brain didn't work well either. It was enraged by the 4 elemental dragons, and they fought in a chaotic melee, but it did not attack Rowan, the summoner. What's going on? Is its IQ this low despite such a high level? This situation is still quite rare. Generally speaking, the higher the level of a creature, the higher its intelligence. Life forms that are so stupid even at level 63, with an IQ like a wild animal, are indeed rare. Rowan used soul stripping again, controlling an amorphous slime. He counted them, there were 7 in total. It was just a pity that soul stripping could only be used 3 times a day, and the level difference had to be over 10 levels to succeed. He couldn't use soul stripping to control this primordial chaos, but the other amorphous slimes were fine. These guys also had very low intelligence, and didn't have anything like steadfast will. After being controlled, they could only convey simple consciousness communication and couldn't understand overly complex commands, but it was enough. Relying on magic, Rowan controlled the remaining 4 amorphous slimes. They were just level 50-something trinkets. He could completely restrict them using some magic. As for the primordial chaos, after Rowan finished dealing with these amorphous slimes, it was actually still fighting the 4 elemental dragons fiercely. Its strength was not bad. Ordinary monsters should have already been at a disadvantage by now, but the opponent was fighting more fiercely as the battle went on. The primordial chaos's defense was astonishing. The attacks of the 4 elemental dragons seemed painless to it. On the contrary, those 4 elemental dragons were already wounded in many places. The primordial chaos condensed a large black axe, and with a jumping slash, directly split one of the wounded fire dragons in 2. That fire dragon turned into 2 wisps of smoke and dissipated. High attack, and very high defense too. It was much stronger than ordinary monsters of the same level. Its strength was indeed good, but it was a pity its origin was mysterious, otherwise, it would be nice to keep it as a pet. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.